I've been farming this land for 23 years, and in all that time, my 1972 John Deere has never let me down. Sure, she's got more rust than paint in some places, and the seats held together with duct tape and prayers, but she runs like the day she rolled off the assembly line, maybe better. The morning of the county fair's tractor pulling contest, I was out in the barn, giving her the usual once-over. Oil levels good, hydraulics responding, engine purring that deep throaty rumble that only comes from decades of honest work. My neighbors had been ribbing me for weeks about entering the contest. "Tom, you can't be serious about taking that old thing against those new machines," my neighbor Jake had said just yesterday. He was probably right. The contest would feature tractors worth more than my entire farm. Machines with computers and GPS systems and engines that cost more than I make in a year. But there was something about the way Old Green sat in that barn, something about the way the morning light hit her faded paint that made me think she had one more fight left in her. I'd rebuilt her engine myself 3 times over the years. I knew every bolt, every wire, every quirk she had, and she knew me. I ran my hand along her hood, feeling the familiar dents and scratches that told the story of our partnership. Each mark was a memory, a season survived, a challenge overcome. Today would just be another chapter in our long story together. The contest started at noon. Time to show these young folks what real farming was all about. The fairgrounds buzzed with activity as I pulled into the parking area with Old Green loaded on my trailer. The contrast was immediate and stark. Gleaming modern tractors surrounded us, their paint jobs so perfect they looked like they'd never seen a day's work. GPS antennas reached skyward like metal prayers, and computerized displays blinked with more information than I'd ever need to plant a field. I backed Old Green off the trailer, her diesel engine coughing to life with that familiar rumble. A few heads turned, and I caught the expressions: amusement, pity, and in some cases outright laughter. A group of younger farmers gathered around a massive red machine that looked more like a spaceship than a tractor. "Would you look at that?" one of them said, pointing in my direction. Somebody's granddad brought his museum piece. I kept my face neutral as I drove over to the registration table. The contest official, a man about my age who should have known better, looked up from his clipboard with barely concealed surprise. "You sure about this, Tom? Entry fee's $50 and, well, you see what you're up against." I handed him the money without a word. He shrugged and handed me a number placard, 47. Dead last in the lineup, which suited me just fine. Sometimes the best surprises come at the end. As I attached the number to Old Green's side, I noticed a small crowd gathering. Word was spreading through the fairgrounds about the old farmer and his antique tractor. The laughter was getting louder, but I'd heard worse. Respect isn't given. It's earned, one pull at a time. The announcer's voice crackled over the PA system as the first tractor approached the pulling sled. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 42nd Annual County Fair Tractor Pulling Contest. We've got some serious horsepower here today." I positioned Old Green at the far end of the staging area and watched the competition unfold. The first few tractors were impressive, their engines screaming as they dragged the weighted sled down the track. Distances were measured in feet and inches, with each pull adding weight to the sled for the next competitor. Tractor number 3, a gleaming blue machine that probably cost more than my house, managed an impressive 287 feet before the sled's weight brought it to a halt. The crowd cheered, and the young farmer climbed down with a confident grin, already calculating his chances at the prize money. "That's going to be hard to beat," someone near me commented. As the morning progressed, the competition grew fiercer. Modern tractors with turbocharged engines and sophisticated traction control systems pulled the increasingly heavy sled with mechanical precision. The crowd favorite, a massive green machine with dual rear wheels and enough horsepower to power a small town, managed 294 feet to thunderous applause. I sat on old Green's worn seat, watching and learning. Each pull taught me something about the track conditions, the sled's behavior, and the subtle art of tractor pulling. The dirt was packed hard from the morning's use, which would actually work in my favor. Old Green had always preferred solid ground to loose soil. The laughter from earlier had died down somewhat, replaced by curious glances and whispered conversations about what the old farmer thought he was doing. While waiting for my turn, I found myself lost in memories of all the work old Green and I had accomplished together. She'd helped me clear 40 acres of stumps when I first bought this farm, her hydraulics groaning as we pulled oak roots that had been in the ground since before my grandfather was born. There was the spring of '98 when the rains came late and I had to plant my entire corn crop in a 2-week window. Old Green ran 18-hour days without complaint, her engine never missing a beat as we raced against time and weather. That crop saved the farm during a particularly lean year. I remembered the day my son Jake took his first ride in the cab with me, his small hands gripping the steering wheel while I worked the pedals. He'd wanted to be a farmer then, before college and city life called him away. Old Green had been patient with his eager questions and careful with his precious cargo. The tractor had been there for every major moment of my farming life. She'd pulled me out of ditches, both literal and financial. She'd worked through blizzards and heat waves, through good years and bad. Her engine had been the soundtrack to my adult life, a steady rhythm that marked the passing of seasons and years. Now, as I watch these modern machines with their computerized everything, I realize that Old Green represented something these new tractors couldn't match. Continuity, reliability, and the kind of partnership that only comes from decades of shared work. We weren't just farmer and machine, we were a team forged in the fields of real experience. By the time we reached tractor number 30, word had spread throughout the fairgrounds about the old John Deere entered in the contest. What had started as casual amusement had evolved into genuine curiosity. Families with children pointed in our direction, and I overheard more than one conversation about that old green tractor. The announcer, perhaps sensing the crowd's interest, began playing up the story. Folks, we've got quite a range of machines here today, from the latest in agricultural technology to, well, let's just say some classics that have seen a few seasons. The laughter was different now, less mocking and more anticipatory. People seemed to be rooting for the underdog, even if they didn't expect much. A group of teenagers had gathered near the fence, their phones out, ready to capture what they probably expected to be either a spectacular failure or a quaint attempt. An elderly man approached me as I made final adjustments to Old Green's tire pressure. "That's a fine machine you've got there," he said, running his hand along her fender. "My daddy had one just like her, pulled stumps with it for 30 years. "They don't make them like this anymore," I replied, checking the hydraulic fluid one more time. "No, they surely don't. All computers and gadgets now. A man can't even fix his own equipment anymore without some technician and a laptop." He paused, studying Old Green's worn but solid frame. "I hope she shows them young bucks a thing or two." The weight of expectation was settling on my shoulders, but it felt good. Sometimes an old dog needs a chance to show he still has some fight left in him. As we moved closer to my turn, the contest hit its first major snag. Tractor number 38, a state-of-the-art machine with more computing power than the space shuttle, suddenly ground to a halt halfway down the track. Its engine died completely, and no amount of button pushing or computer diagnostics could bring it back to life. The crowd watched as technicians swarmed the disabled tractor, laptops and diagnostic equipment appearing like magic. 20 minutes passed while they tried to identify the problem. Finally, a frustrated voice over the radio announced that the tractor would need to be towed off the track. "Computer malfunction," the announcer explained to the crowd. "Sometimes all that technology can be a double-edged sword, folks." I couldn't help but smile. Old Green didn't have a computer chip in her entire body. Every system was mechanical, every problem fixable with basic tools and common sense. If something went wrong, I could diagnose it by sound, smell, or feel. No laptops required. The delay gave me more time to study the track conditions and watch how the sled behaved. I noticed that the most successful pulls had come from tractors that maintained steady power rather than those that tried to overwhelm the sled with brute force. The key seemed to be finding the right balance between power and traction, between aggression and patience. As they finally cleared the disabled tractor from the track, I fired up Old Green's engine. Her familiar rumble cut through the afternoon air like a promise. No computers, no diagnostics, no technical difficulties, just 49 years of proven reliability and the steady heartbeat of American engineering. "Tractor number 47, you're on deck," the official called out. That was us. I could feel the crowd's attention shift in our direction as I drove Old Green toward the starting line. The murmur of conversation grew louder, and I caught fragments of commentary from the stands. "Look at that old thing. Must be from the 70s. Bless his heart, he's really going to try." The sled had been loaded with additional weight after each successful pull, and now it carried nearly 4 tons of concrete blocks and steel plates. The track showed the scars of 46 previous attempts, with deep ruts and loose dirt marking where other tractors had fought for traction. I positioned Old Green behind the sled and waited for the official to attach the pulling chain. The weight of the moment settled over me like morning fog. This wasn't just about winning or losing anymore. It was about proving that experience and determination could still matter in a world increasingly dominated by technology and youth. The official checked the chain attachment twice, then stepped back and raised his flag. The crowd fell silent, and I could hear my own heartbeat over Old Green's steady idle. Somewhere in the stands, a child asked his father if the old tractor could really pull all that weight. I adjusted my grip on the steering wheel and felt Old Green's engine vibrating through the seat. She was ready. We'd pulled heavier loads through deeper mud on countless mornings when the work had to be done regardless of conditions. This was just another day at the office, except this time we had an audience. The flag dropped, and I eased Old Green into gear. No dramatic throttle up, no spinning tires or roaring engine, just steady, measured power applied with the patience of 2 decades spent learning how to make this machine work. The sled began to move, slowly at first, then with gathering momentum. The crowd's murmur died completely. In the sudden silence, Old Green's diesel engine provided the only soundtrack, its rhythm steady and confident. 50 feet, 100 feet. The sled was moving smoothly, and I could feel through the seat that we had plenty of power in reserve. At 150 feet, I heard the first surprise comment from the stands. "Well, I'll be damned." The track conditions were perfect for Old Green's wide, aggressive tread tires, and her low center of gravity kept her planted firmly on the ground. No wheel spin, no wasted energy, just efficient transfer of power to the ground. 200 feet came and went. The sled was getting heavier as its weight transfer mechanism engaged, but Old Green never wavered. I could feel her engine working harder now, but still well within her capabilities. The key was maintaining steady momentum rather than trying to muscle through with brute force. At 250 feet, the crowd began to stir. We were approaching the distances achieved by tractors worth 10 times what Old Green was worth. The laughter had stopped completely, replaced by something that sounded almost like respect. The old tractor was proving that sometimes experience trumps technology, that sometimes the old ways are still the best ways. The sled kept moving, and Old Green kept pulling. At 280 feet, we passed the distance achieved by most of the modern tractors. The crowd was on its feet now, and I could hear individual voices cheering us on. "Come on, old girl," someone shouted. "Show them how it's done." Old Green responded as if she could hear the encouragement. Her engine note deepened slightly as I asked for more power, but she never hesitated, never faltered. The sled was fighting us now, its weight transfer system adding resistance with every foot of progress, but we had momentum on our side, 290 feet, 295 feet. We were approaching the best distance of the day, set by that massive green machine with the dual rear wheels and computer-controlled everything. The crowd noise was building to a crescendo, and I found myself leaning forward in the seat as if I could somehow help Old Green pull harder. At 298 feet, I felt the sled's resistance increase dramatically. This was the moment of truth, where brute horsepower usually determined the winner. But Old Green had something those other tractors didn't: 49 years of experience in applying power efficiently. I feathered the throttle, finding that sweet spot where maximum power met maximum traction. 300 feet. We'd tied the day's best distance. The crowd was going wild, but Old Green wasn't finished. The sled was fighting every inch now, but she kept pulling with the same steady determination that had carried us through decades of farm work. This was what she was built for, what she'd been doing her entire mechanical life. 305 feet, 310 feet. We were in uncharted territory now, setting a new record with every foot of progress. At 315 feet, I could feel Old Green reaching her limits. Her engine was working harder than I'd heard it work in years, but the sound was still strong, still confident. The sled was fighting us with everything it had, its weight transfer system fully engaged, but we weren't done yet. The crowd had gone from cheering to something approaching awe. This wasn't supposed to happen. The old tractor wasn't supposed to be winning. But here we were, pulling further than any machine had pulled all day, and Old Green was still moving forward. 320 feet. 325 feet. I could feel the exact moment when the sled's resistance peaked. This was the wall that had stopped every other tractor, the point where even the most powerful engines couldn't overcome the physics of weight and friction. But Old Green had been overcoming physics her entire life, one impossible task at a time. The key was patience. Instead of trying to power through the resistance, I maintained steady throttle and let Old Green's torque do the work. Her engine had been designed for exactly this kind of sustained load, built in an era when tractors were expected to work all day under maximum stress without complaint. 330 feet. The sled was barely moving now, but it was still moving. Every inch was a victory, every foot a testament to the engineering and craftsmanship of a bygone era. The crowd had fallen silent again, watching in amazement as the old John Deere continued to defy expectations. I could feel the end approaching, that moment when even Old Green's legendary determination would meet its match. But we weren't there yet. At 335 feet, something changed. I felt it through the steering wheel, through the seat, through the very frame of the tractor. Old Green was reaching deep into her mechanical soul, finding reserves of power and determination that even I didn't know existed. The engine note changed, becoming deeper, more purposeful, as if she understood exactly what was at stake. The sled was fighting us with everything it had, but Old Green had been fighting her entire life. She'd fought through blizzards and droughts, through mechanical failures and financial hardships. She'd fought to clear fields, plant crops, and harvest dreams. This was just another fight, and she'd never learned how to quit. 340 feet. The crowd was absolutely silent now, holding its collective breath as the old tractor continued to pull against impossible odds. I could see the finish line ahead, marked by a simple white flag stuck in the ground. It seemed both impossibly far away and tantalizingly close. The sled's weight was enormous now, but Old Green's traction was perfect. Her wide tires bit into the packed earth with the confidence of decades spent working in conditions far worse than this. No wheel spin, no wasted energy, just pure mechanical advantage applied with the precision of long experience. 345 feet, 350 feet. We were approaching distances that seemed impossible for any tractor, let alone one built during the Nixon administration. But Old Green had always specialized in the impossible, in making the impractical work through sheer determination and superior engineering. The finish line was just ahead, and Old Green was still pulling. At 355 feet, the sled finally stopped. Not because Old Green had given up, but because we'd reached the end of the track. The official distance markers only went to 350 feet, and we'd pulled beyond them into uncharted territory. The crowd erupted in cheers that could probably be heard 3 counties over. I sat in Old Green's seat for a moment, letting the reality sink in. We'd done it. The old tractor that everyone had laughed at, the machine they'd written off as a relic, had just set a new contest record. Not by a few feet, but by more than 60 feet, demolishing the previous best distance. The contest official approached with his measuring tape, shaking his head in amazement. "Tom, I've been running this contest for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like that. Your tractor just pulled further than machines with 3 times the horsepower." I climbed down from Old Green's seat and patted her fender. She was still running strong, her engine settling back into its familiar idle as if nothing extraordinary had happened. To her, this had just been another day's work, another impossible task completed with quiet competence. The crowd was pressing against the barriers now, everyone wanting a closer look at the tractor that had just rewritten the record books. Children pointed in wonder, teenagers snapped photos, and more than one modern farmer was studying Old Green with newfound respect. The announcer's voice boomed across the fairgrounds. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new contest record. Tractor number 47, a 1972 John Deere, has just pulled 355 feet. The trophy presentation was surreal. Standing there with Old Green beside me, holding a piece of hardware bigger than my toolbox, I felt like I was living someone else's dream. The crowd was still buzzing with excitement, and the other competitors were gathering around to examine the tractor that had beaten them all. "What's your secret?" asked the young farmer whose high-tech machine had held the previous record. He was studying Old Green's engine compartment with the intensity of a detective examining evidence. "No secret," I replied. "Just good maintenance and knowing your equipment. She's been pulling heavy loads for 49 years. This was just another day at the office for her." The contest organizers wanted to know everything about Old Green's specifications, her modifications, her maintenance history. They seemed convinced there had to be some hidden advantage, some secret weapon that explained her performance. But there wasn't. She was exactly what she appeared to be. A well-maintained, properly operated piece of American agricultural equipment doing what she was designed to do. A reporter from the county newspaper appeared with a camera and a notepad full of questions. How does it feel to beat all those modern tractors with a machine that's almost 50 years old? I thought about that for a moment, watching Old Green's exhaust pipe puff occasional clouds of diesel smoke into the afternoon air. "It feels like vindication," I finally said. "Sometimes the old ways are still the best ways. Sometimes experience matters more than technology." The crowd began to disperse, but people kept approaching to get a closer look at Old Green and to shake my hand. As the sun began to set over the fairgrounds, I loaded Old Green back onto the trailer for the trip home. The trophy sat in the cab beside me, catching the last rays of daylight and throwing golden reflections across the dashboard. It had been quite a day. The drive home was peaceful, with Old Green secured behind me and the memory of her performance fresh in my mind. We'd proven something important today, not just to the crowd or the other competitors, but to ourselves. Age and experience still counted for something in this world of constant technological change. Back at the farm, I unloaded Old Green and drove her into the barn where she belonged. in the familiar surroundings of home, surrounded by the tools and equipment of daily farm life, the day's events seemed almost dreamlike. But the trophy was real, and so was the satisfaction of a job well done. I spent a few extra minutes checking her over, making sure the day's exertion hadn't caused any problems. Oil levels good, hydraulics responding normally, engine temperature perfect. She'd given everything she had and asked for nothing in return except proper care and respect. As I turned off the barn lights and headed toward the house, I could hear Old Green's engine ticking as it cooled down. It was a sound I'd heard thousands of times before, the mechanical equivalent of a contented sigh after a day's work well done. Tomorrow we'd be back to the regular routine of farm work, but today had been special. Today, we'd reminded everyone that sometimes the best machines are the ones that have proven themselves over decades of honest work. Thank you for listening to this story of Old Green and me. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful victories come not from having the newest or most expensive equipment, but from understanding and respecting the tools we have. Whether you're working with tractors, computers, or anything in between, there's something to be said for experience, patience, and the kind of partnership that only comes from years of shared challenges. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What part of the world are you listening from? Do you have your own story of an underdog victory or a piece of equipment that surprised everyone? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Until next time, keep pulling forward, no matter what anyone else thinks about your chances.